What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Shifty's Club Sports Podcast. This is going to be the start of a weekly series of sports talk as far as how I see the current leagues, teams, players, statistics, matchups, and more. While I have done sports betting videos in the past, I feel as this would be a much better source of information, or at least from the brain of a man who's been a professional sports bettor for 14 years. Anyway, let's begin. So, given we are starting a brand new season, I think it's best to talk about the rankings first and then try to delve into the teams individually. Given the college football season technically starts this week, I think we'll focus on college football this week. And I've got the AP poll and the coaches poll up, and I'm very disappointed with the initial rankings. Honestly, they completely messed it up for what I believe the season will behold. Assuming certain teams won't be badly injured, I can't see Ohio State being ranked one. Honestly, I see Indiana going 12-0 in the regular season, beating out every other team for this spot. Now, keep in mind that they've kept quite a lot of their starting lineup for last season, but they did acquire some good talent in the transfer portal, including Josh Hoover at QB. But do not let TCU's record fool you. For those you don't know, Josh Hoover played at TCU as a QB last year. Do not let the record fool you regarding him. He has proven that he can produce with 272 completions for over 3,400 yards last year. His ability to scramble wasn't proven last year, but Coach Signetti has assured us that he's been working on his scramble ability, ensuring he can make the plays whenever necessary. I can say with full assurance that he's 100% ready for the season. I'd even go so far as to say he'll more than likely be a Heisman candidate. Um, the best part about his arrival is he has a much stronger O line than he had at TCU. He has Carter Smith, Drew Evans, Bray Lynch on the line returning from last year. They brought over Joe Brunner for Wisconsin, and while he is slightly slower with his agility, like his strength should be able to provide decent cover for the passing game. I'm not sure on a Johnny and how he will fare, but if Signetti's got him starting, he's got to be good. Um, in the backfield, you have a transfer out of Boston College who did pretty well in a very poorly performing team last year. Richard was without a doubt the shining piece of the program, and his transfer proved to give Indiana a solid run game piece um, that can run through the gaps and has experienced the left side of the line. So especially that strong portion of the left side of the offensive line being for Indiana, it's going to be so much easier for him to be able to do that run game on the weak side. Also, if push comes to shove, you also have Martin and Beebe who certainly proved their abilities last season. Um, my biggest question is the receiver core, though. Like, while I know how good Marsh was at Michigan State last year, I have no idea how productive Preston, Becker, and Morris will be. Don't get me started on the tight end core. Holy crap. Their entire lineup are a bunch of redshirt freshmen. Now, I say that to say this. Under the wing of Coach Signetti, these guys can very easily develop. On the defensive side, I have zero worries. Guys like Tyreek Tucker and Mario Landino are coming back inside the D line. But you do have guys like Obiazor and Osunsami, um, or Osunsami, I had a bad with pronunciation, who both transferred from K State and are solid D end options. For the linebackers, Hardy, Jones, and Sharp were all outstanding for the Hoosiers last year, and I expect them to continue that trend. Um, Amari Farrell is running to the free safety spot. While we didn't get to see a lot of Baldwin last year, I still expect both of them to perform well. Um, they also brought over Zachman from Wisconsin, and a player with whom I'm very familiar with AJ Harris, who played at Georgia, for those who didn't know, And of course, how could we ever forget about the kicking game? Nico Radicic has returned, and boy was he great last year. He was perfect on his extra points, only missed one field goal, which was in the second quarter versus Ohio State. Last year, he was 39 yards out. Outside of that, he shows plenty of promise. Um, Now, I know we spent a lot of time talking about one team so far, but it's very important to know why I consider a team to truly be the best in the nation. However, assuming they don't get injured, I expect Texas Longhorns to be competing for the championship as well. I could talk about Arch Manning's abilities all day, but most of you already know about them. I will say that in the offseason, he did work with his uncle on a lot of technique practicing, and according to Sarkeesian, he's gotten quite stronger in the weight room, and I expect his scramble to also include quite a stiff arm that can help his run game. Let's just hope he doesn't get injured during these rush attempts. Um, Before I get to their line, though, I need to talk about Smothers, who transferred from NC State in order to replace Wisner, who decided to transfer to Florida State. For those who don't know, during his time at North Carolina State, Hollywood Smothers rushed for about I think it was like 939, but it's like almost 1,000 yards last season. Um, his best known feature is his ability to quickly read and react to situations on the field. Like if you look at moments like his rush early mid third quarter versus Dew, you can see that there were two backers set up to control the run. And before his mate even gets to the second level, he makes his move and flies to the house. Then Oh, another moment would be the start of the second quarter against Pittsburgh, when he was supposed to hit a hole off tackle, which for those who don't know is the either the 4 eye or the 5 gap. But then you also have a 2 eye gap, which is off the hip of the guard, and instead of going for an off tackle, ends up going with a slam because of how the defense pursued. So he just took a completely different hole altogether in less than a half a second. Um, and it's pretty cool to watch very awkward cuts to avoid not one but two players. From this, just get to the house with his elusive 4.3 speed, but do expect him to get about 10 to 12 rushing yard or 10 to 12 rushing touchdowns this season. Um, and while I talked about Smothers, I need to talk about Raleek Brown. Okay, the power back that transferred from Arizona State with over 1,100 rushing yards last season, and a very good display of receiver skills. I will say. I won't go too in depth because he's going to be mostly a short yardage back to get those extra yards for first downs, as well as a technique receiver whenever they need to go, like, say, four wide and have an extra spare receiver out. Um, but despite losing a few O linemen, Arch still has Connor Robertson under center. Holy crap. This alone will help tremendously ensure that he's comfortable in the pocket when necessary. It's not often, but when it does happen, he also has Gooseby and Baker coming back. But sadly, the backup options for most of these O line positions are a bunch of freshmen. And this is why I say it's very important that they stay healthy in order to do well. Uh, Bringing Seymour out of Western Kentucky was probably a good move, as he's very sturdy. And they brought in Siani in at the right tackle out of Wake Forest, but I do have slight doubts about his abilities. No, while I'm on the O-line position, I need to talk about the elephant in the room for this offense, and that's the tight end position. So while I think Shannon Spencer is good, they brought in a transfer from Michigan. sh- Um, in this, or sorry, Michigan State. His name is Mazunas, who I think could lead the whole team in receiving if they utilize him correctly. What he did for MSU last year was as clutch as it could possibly get. His play was spectacular. Like, despite them favoring Jack Velling over him in the rotation, the catches he made when given the opportunity were miraculous. Now, I can't say anything about Nick Townsend or Will Randall as they don't give me enough film to govern their playability. I will say that there are zero concerns with the receiver core. You bring back Wingo, who, in my opinion, will be the second best receiver in college football this year, behind Jeremiah Smith, of course, and from Ohio State, for those of you who don't know. And I hope you do, because he's literally going to be the first or second overall player picked in the draft this coming year. um, and then you also have Cam Coleman coming in from Auburn, who is a huge success for their passing game. Um, you bring back Emmett Mosley. I will say though that I'm uncertain how well a transfer named Sterling Burkhalter will fare in his offense. Um, given that he came from Wake Forest and it's very different offense compared to what Texas has, and hopefully it won't be a horrible thing, but it is noteworthy. Um, Now, I won't go deep into the defense because we already know for the most part that Hiro Kanu runs the D line up front. And Jelani McDonald, and no, this is absolutely the truth. You cannot judge this as there's no room for argument here. Jelani McDonald will be considered the best strong safety in the country by the end of the year. Given half of the SEC likes to run pro style offenses, he'll have plenty of opportunities to get all of his stats padded. You're talking about a man who I expect to be either a third or fourth overall pick, possibly even a second. He is that good. Now, I will say you have a few senior transfers like Rasheem Biles from Pittsburgh, um, at the will linebacker for those who don't know, and Justin Cryer from Florida State at the Mike linebacker. Then you have another backup at the will in Darius Snow from Michigan State. Um, Keep an eye out for that will linebacker position. It will be heavily contested this year, as both of these players are absolutely phenomenally top players. So if one gets injured, you know that they're not crying in that position. Um, then you've got very unrecognizable names alongside McDonald in the secondary. McDonald obviously not a unrecognizable, but the other guys beside him, like you've got Williams, Phillips. Um, Okay, never mind. Littleton is somewhat recognizable. For those of you who know Littleton, he's a good player. He's got some stats to his name. Everyone who is a Texas fan knows who Littleton is. Um, Especially disappointed Oklahoma fans. They know who Littleton is. Ruined the first half of first half of their game last season. Nevertheless, I expect them to do well on defense. Um, on another note, let's focus on teams who have a shot at going to the dance. First up, Ohio State. I hate to say it. I'll say that Ohio State certainly has the talent to make it. There's no doubt they probably got the most talented team in the entire country. My biggest concern is how bad Coach Day is at keeping his players disciplined. They make tons of stupid mistakes that cost them at the worst times, and it's completely dismantled their ability to finish the job at the end of the season. Despite these struggles, the press is still stupid enough to rank them number one. And almost every season, they are proven wrong. And it's mainly because they are too undisciplined to finish the job properly. Um, I mean, just look at the talent on the roster. You got Jeremiah freaking Smith. You got Brandon Ennis. You got freaking Chris Henry, the seventh ranked player in the ESPN 300 from Mater Dei, California. Okay? This receiver core is not even arguably the most talented in the country. It straight up is the most talented, and you cannot argue it without lying. Now, while I don't consider Julian Sayed to be a Heisman quarterback, he has the receiver core to make him look like he is. And that's where the press gets it wrong. Now, I'm saying he is not the best player, but he is a great player. Do not get me wrong. I'm not saying that he is not a great player. He is not the best player. But look at even the linemen he has blocking for him. Luke Montgomery, Carson Hensman, Austin Sierreveld, Philip Daniels. Oh, and did I mention Ian Moore? Who, if y'all remember from a couple years ago, is a 2024 ESPN 300 player. Yeah, he's got plenty of talent surrounding him on the offensive line. He has almost no worries about getting the ball out of his hands. And people will say a Heisman is because they're the best. No, it's because the players around them make them the best or make them seem like the best player. The press doesn't understand this though. But I will say, um, at the tight end, you have Nate Roberts, who is a 2025 ESPN 300, as well as their running back Bo Jackson. He also was as well. I think they were. Was it one? I think it was like 120th or 130th rank and 150 something for Bo Jackson. I think that's what it was. It's been a while since I've looked at it. It was because I've been focused on 2026 one last year. I try to remember. I remember most of the players where they're ranked, but not everyone. Um, oh, and on the defensive side, you have raw power and speed in the form of several transfers like John Walker, James Smith, Christian Allegro, Terry Moore, Earl Little. Uh, Granted, you still have Jackson and Atkinson up front on the ends. Pearson Matthews in the middle, and McLean and Dev. Oh, the 13th overall 2025 ESPN 300 player, Devin Sanchez, returning to the secondary. Um, so yes, they have plenty of talent on defense, almost as much as they do on offense. It's the talent's there, and in their kicking game, this is where I question Ohio State. Connor Hawkins sucks ass. And I'm not sure how much better Cooper Peterson will be. So, do they have a shot? Idealistically, yes. But in reality, it's a very long stretch because of their undisciplined nature. Now, a team that has discipline and, lucky for us, one less problematic starter, an absolutely worthless left tackle that went first round in the NFL draft last year to the Panthers. My team, the Georgia Bulldogs, look poised to try to compete for a title this year. Do I think they can do that? Of course, I think they have a chance. But you all that know me know I'm the least biased person of anyone. My thoughts on Georgia is that they will more than likely go 11-1 in their season, um, with the loss being to Oklahoma. I believe that the Oklahoma Texas game will define the shape of who plays in the SEC championship game. And there's a possibility that either one could play Georgia for it this year. I just look what Oklahoma has going for them. You have John Mateer, who I expect to be big time, arguably the best O lineman in the 2028 NFL draft, and Michael Falsosi. Um, and the entire defensive core that is barely changed from last season, meaning they're familiar with each other and ready to do battle. Anyway, now back to Georgia. I sell that see this. You have a core that's stable, okay? But there are a few uncertain pieces in place. We all know that Gunnar Stockton is proven and good to go. as is running back Nate Frazier, Chauncey Bowens, tight end Lawson Lucky, a better tackle from last year, Ernest Green, the well Green 3. If you guys know who, if you know what I'm talking about, if you're a Georgia fan, you know who Green 3 is. Green 3. That's what they call them. And wideout London Humphreys. There are players about which I have zero question. I'm not convinced on the transfer wideout of Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech, as his ball handling skills came into question with his many close call fumble opportunities he gave up last season, as well as White Helton, who I barely know anything of outside of his high school career at Cartersville. um, Oh, we do expect Caden Prothro to do well, given he's this year's 22nd overall ESPN 300 player. So not much to worry about there. Um, Now, I know their passing game isn't the highlight of the stat sheet, and it shouldn't be. But knowing that you have optimal pieces in the receiving game is something that helps keep the defense honest. They know how dominant Frazier and Bowens are in the backfield, but it doesn't matter when they can rush 6 or 7 and the receiving game isn't solid. Luckily, I think they have a plan in place and have something figured out. I just can't see them dominating on defense like Texas or Oklahoma will this year. Alabama will be rather easy because the majority of their defensive talent is in the secondary and only one 5-star player on front in the defense for them. Um, I feel comfortable saying UGA should be able to handle them pretty easily this season. Obviously, Florida and Ole Miss are a walk in the park games. Mizzou shouldn't be a problem, and Tech lost most of their best players and are trying to use the transfer portal to rebuild. And sadly, that doesn't really work against Georgia. Um, their defense obviously is the glue that holds the team's success together, and it's the reason why teams like Bama and Ole Miss won't even contend for a win against them. You have Gabe Harris, uh, Jordan Hall, elect 2025 ESPN 300 third-ranked player Elijah Griffin, Quintavious Johnson, Raylan Wilson, Chris Cole, Ellis Robinson, KJ Bolden, DeMello Jones, and they're coming back to make a statement on defense. Now, while I'm not very familiar with Jamarly Riddle, he's a transfer from Eastern Carolina. I am familiar with Khalil Barnes out of Clemson, and I know he will fit into the secondary very well. But keep in mind that there is even more talent backing up these players like Xavier McLeod, Josh Horton, Justin Williams, Zeno Branch, Kyron Jones. Plus, you got very promising freshmen like Todd Robinson, Jonte Gilbert, Chase Linton, Caden Harris, Tyreek Green, uh, and then I think these are going to be the redshirt freshmen. You've got Justice Fitzpatrick, Jordan Smith, Pierre Dean, Zachariah Fort, Kamari Brooks, Anthony Lunnon. Um, like all of these guys, I believe those I think it's like 6 guys. I think they are ESPN 300s that I'm pretty sure are going to redshirt. The problem is if it doesn't work out for them by year 2 and they're not sliding into any roles for like starting or backup roles, they're more likely going to utilize the transfer portal. And this is where it does become somewhat problematic. Um, but if they can get some small level action in this season or next to prove whether they'll be able to play for a few years at Georgia or down the road, um, then they can decide whether or not they'll stay or be able to transfer to another program, which could better use them. I mean, I could see all of them redshirting, but that would exhaust a lot of ESPN 300 player talent. In my opinion, every one of them could start on day 1 on half the programs in the nation. Um, the kicking game will be something to watch out for. Peyton Woodring isn't a wonderful kicker. He is consistent with PATs. I will give them that. He is not missing any in his entire collegiate career. But he does have questionable issues with field goals, especially distance. His longest in the career was 55, but it seems like 60 is definitely out of range given how difficult it was for him to make that 55. Um, and that's based on where I see the ball crossing the crossbar during field goal attempts. Um, I will say, though, that I feel perfectly fine with UG at this moment, but I hope a few years down the road, and I'm dead serious when I say this, I hope a few years down the road, we're not seeing Jake Bobo starting a quarterback because that would be a travesty. And luckily, I only have to see Stockton and Puglisi on the field, so I'm happy for now. um, but that's it for those particular teams. And I will say though, there are a lot of people who ask me what I think about their teams this upcoming season. My main one is from a buddy who went to Notre Dame, and I think they'll either go 9-3 or 8-4. With their schedule is rather easy. They will almost certainly lose to Miami and North Carolina. Now, I have my doubts about their ability to beat SMU at home, but Purdue won't be easy for them. Um, Keep in mind that while Miami is an obvious choice, UNC isn't. And that's something that normal, regular, everyday people don't understand. They think, oh, this team is the worst record, so they're going to lose. That is completely wrong. For those who don't know, Notre Dame has zero reason to be optimistic this year. Now, their QB Carr is a 4-star out of Salem, Michigan with a full season of play behind his belt. However, he struggles not to turn the ball over. He only completes 2/3 of his passes and has an INT ratio of 1-5. Yeah, which is absolutely horrendous. He has a very young offensive line, and his best receiver tool is a face on. Not very promising. uh, while their defensive formation is a 4-2-5, in my opinion, is the best one in football. The players on defense are either really good or just average. Your best players are Bowen, Schuler, Osbury, Johnson, and Moore. And then your other players, without a doubt, just plain ordinary players with no large upside. Otherwise, I would know them by name. I do know some of them, not all of them. And I'm not saying that they don't have a chance, but don't expect this team to do any better than 10-2 at the very most. Um, Another team I got to ask about is Florida State. From one of my good friends I see at Zaxby's quite often. As much talent as I think FSU has, I'm not sure how well it will translate this year. I see they have some tough games on their schedule, including Bama in September, Miami in October, SMU, Clemson possibly could be a tough one, and maybe even Florida. Like, I'm not saying Bama's a great team by any stretch of the imagination, but do keep in mind that they do recruit hard and they have a talent that is mostly built up from the ground. Now, as far as the roster goes, I'm kind of on the fence. The main reason is because over half of their starting lineup consists of transfers from this year. Yeah, I'm not joking. Let's count them. Ashton Daniels from Auburn, Wisner from Texas, Rouse from ECU, several offensive linemen, but I'm going to go mainly with Chaplin from Auburn and Paps from Bowling Green. You've got, speaking of Bowling Green, Bowling from Troy, uh, Welch Joyner from Purdue. Um, on the defense, we have Kennedy from A&M, Bayer from UNC, Chris Jones from Southern Miss, Chandler from South Alabama. But he originally came from Georgia Tech. Originally played at Georgia Tech, sorry. Um, Richard Jr. from Illinois State. Um, Makai Jones from Duke. And I know him from his playing days at Milton High School near me. This is already 13 starting players out of 22 on offense and defense. I've even gotten to the special teams, which is nothing but transfers. Like Hughes from New Mexico, uh, Panikowski from OK State, um, and then I'm not even going to mention the kickoff, long snapper, or holder. To me, that just means their special teams is arguably the most questionable, and I will say the receiver core as well as their defense or defensive line are almost untouched. And I believe that a receiver is more than likely going to be the punt and kick returner. And that'll do kind of well because he'll already be familiar with the program. And he'll probably be the fastest guy on the field. I'm not sure. Um, but they do lack a. But out of these players, the receiver core and the defensive line specifically lacks a large amount of game experience, especially since both Wynn and Lyons are freshmen, and Desir is a sophomore. That's a very young defensive line. I mean, in the wide receiver core, at least Deuce Robinson can provide as much help as receiver as Daniels will need. But I do expect many teams to double cover him, forcing him to go to Danzy or Riles. It's not the most fascinating scenario, but it's what they currently have. Like I sadly don't see Florida State doing better than 8-4 this season, but I will say they're going to do worse than that. Keep in mind the 8-4 is what I think is the best they could possibly do. This season, I think they will go 5-7. I think SMU, Bama, Virginia, Louisville, Miami, Clemson, and Florida will be their downfalls. Clemson, Virginia, and Florida can go either way, but given the lack of team proficiency with all of the transfers, I have to give the edge to the others. They could prove me wrong, and I would love that for the sake of my friend. I would love for them to prove me wrong, but I just don't see it. Another team a good friend of mine asked about is Alabama. Um, Unfortunately, I think Bama fans are so used to the success of Nick Saban that they're unwilling to ever believe that their team isn't better than everyone else. And sadly, too many members of the press are the same way. Like, they can't get the success of Nick Saban out of their minds in order to truly evaluate the team from a current perspective, not one based on history. And I think slowly but surely members of the media are realizing that they're not a juggernaut anymore. They are a powder keg at best. And that's being generous. While they've been able to recruit well, it's mostly because of the environment. Those of you who don't know, they have one of the most eye catching facilities in the country. And that alone is enticing enough to bring some players into Bama. However, I will firmly say that Caitlin DeBoer isn't very good at developing players, but he's rather good at game planning and strategy. His players don't develop properly like they would under Saban, and this is what has kept Alabama from achieving the success that they have in the past. So, like for right now, you have a QB competition between Mack and Russell. Both aren't Heisman material at all. Both Hill and Riley in the backfield could be good enough to win some games, but they're not a high skill ceiling players. Um, I think Coleman Williams is a very good receiver, but I have doubts about Meadows. Brooks can catch decently, but he's too slow compared to the rest of the receivers in the league, or receivers and tight ends, that is. He tends to struggle in games versus tough opponents as opposed to Ryan. The O team for this, the O line for this team would scare me if I was a fan, given that almost all of their starters from last year are gone. Now you have a young, incomplete, and imbalanced core up front that you expect to be able to protect your QB and block for your backs. Now, the defensive talent is definitely there. Latham, Pierre, Brown, Hubbard, Saab, they're all good, proven players who can get the job done. However, it's the pieces around them that I don't trust. Uh, like Bingley Jones, he was less than mediocre at Mississippi State last year. I'm sure everybody remembers the game I'm talking about. Um, um, and then you have players like Simmons and Metz. They have either little or no experience. So there's nothing to tell how well that they're going to fare this season. And the rest of the starters are good enough to compete, but I'm not sure how high their skill ceiling is because, like, uh, for example, Morgan, Pierre, and Lee Jr., like, they're not very consistent with how well they play from game to game. And that right there makes it very difficult to determine, from a perspective in the back and secondary core, how well that they're going to do, like, against certain teams. They could throw a game easily just out of context. Or they could just throw one game because one guy decides, oh, I'm going to have this very bad game. He doesn't decide, but he plays poorly this game and then on another game just plays completely dominantly. And then maybe the other guy does and they destroy the secondary, or one guy doesn't and they just don't get anything done. But overall, I see Bama going 9-3 this season, losing to Georgia, of course, losing at Tennessee, losing to Texas A&M, but I will say this: I don't know the time of the LSU game in Death Valley. If that turns out to be a night game, then I would expect Bama to also lose that game as well. They are certainly going downhill, and I just don't see any recovery options for them at this moment. So, tell me, what did you like most about this? What did you like least? Was there anything that I didn't cover that you would like to hear? Do you have a team on which you want my analysis? Do you have any comments, questions, concerns about the league? Any teams, players, coaches, myself, the channel? Please leave any and all comments down below, and there's a good chance that I will address them in my podcast next week. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, because while it is completely free, it is the single best way to support the channel alongside watching the videos and liking them. Anyway, thank you all for listening to this segment of Sports Talk by yours truly, Shifty, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. And as I always say, Shifty's Club.